Welcome to another episode of Dolphins in Depth, the Miami Herald podcast about the Miami Dolphins. And right now, I'm about to bring on my Herald colleague, Barry Jackson, a freshly rested vacation to Barry Jackson. How are you feeling, Barry?
Oh, I'm good. I'm happy to be back with you every Tuesday for the duration of this calendar year, and we'll have some other things as well. Hopefully, a post-game show also, and here for Heat Free Agency, which has been a snooze fest to this point, as Miami struggles to do the type of things that the Dolphins have been able to do in recent years, which is add impact players. Heat suddenly is unable to do that, at least as of this taping.
That's because they've got a real salary cap over there with penalties and taxes on top of taxes when you go over the cap. Whereas, like the NFL, salary cap is fictional money. It's a fabrication of numbers. Dead money gets paid to nobody, but that's another story, Barry. We have got some deals that hopefully will get done by July 23rd, primarily one. I think there should be two, and maybe there's a third. Earlier this offseason, Jalen Waddle got his lucrative extension from the Miami Dolphins, and that came out of left field, surprised everybody. But the Dolphins clearly saw what was happening to the wide receiver market and decided, hey, let's get in front of this as opposed to what we normally do, which is be behind it. Now, they've also got Tua Tagovailoa's contract, multi-year extension, which they've vowed to get done from the end of the offseason. Basically made him say, hold and wait when Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert got their deal. Tua came out and said, hey, I want to earn it. Well, by all accounts, except for the playoff wins, I think he's earned an extension. Now, the question is, will they give him market value? Or, as Tua said, the market is the market. Or will they make him play on a deal that favors them or make him play on his fifth-year option? We've also got Tyreek Hill, who has said, hey, I'm a UPS driver. I do 100 routes. I don't like the fact that other drivers who do 65 routes are being paid more than me. Hey, let's address this, boss man. It'll be interesting to see where that discussion goes. And then Javon Holland is the pretty much other impending free agent who probably wants a new deal. I say probably when we all know he wants a new deal. The question is, what price do you put on Javon Holland when he really hasn't had a breakout season yet? So where do you stand on Tua Tagovailoa and the contract discussions?
Well, this is going to be an unpopular view, but I admire Chris Greer for his discipline so far and not automatically saying, yes, the market is the market. And because Jacksonville was foolish enough to pay Trevor Lawrence an average of $55 million, I know that you dispute those numbers. They can be calculated differently, but whatever they're paying him, let's just say it's a sizable amount. And it's being widely reported as $55 million as an average, just because Jacksonville was dumb enough to do that.
Correct. That's the average. The question is, do you care about the averages?
Right. I mean, right, exactly.
Tyreek Hill's making $30 million a year. He's never ever been paid $30 million a year, but those are the averages. Here's my issue with the Trevor Lawrence contract, and I say this, and I really want Dolphin fans to understand where I'm coming from and take an examination of that contract, because a lot of people are now backing off the fact that this is $200 million of technically guaranteed money. No, it's not guaranteed. He's going to get, and while the whole deal is impressive to me, I'm looking at his deal is a 7-year deal, and he is going to make $132 million in the first 5 years of the deal. Now, that's 7 years, and it factors in his final year of his rookie deal, which they did not tear up. They just gave him a sign-in bonus and moved money around. You know how that works. Then they gave him they factored in the fifth-year option, which they opted into. And then they added on top of that 5 more years of the deal, okay? Now, in the first 5 years of the deal, he's going to get $132 million, and all of that is guaranteed. So for 5 years, they've got Trevor Lawrence at $132 million. And then there's some triggers in 2029, $28 million bonus due, option bonus for 78, and he's going to make total $78.5 million in 2029. Do you honestly think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be paying Trevor Lawrence $78.5 million in 2029? Unless he's like
the number. as we see with all these contracts. Just as you pointed out, the Tyreek Hill last year artificially inflates the true amount of what he's going to be making. Here's my point on Tua, Omar. I just think there is no need to rush into this at the numbers that the market would suggest is necessary at this point. To me, there's absolutely no downside in waiting. I know the Dolphins would like to get something done. Clearly, they're not comfortable going into the mid-50s. I just don't see why is the rush to get it done. Why? Because Tua is antsy. Should that affect the Dolphins thinking about whether it's a wise decision to commit long-term to a player who had multiple concussions 2 years ago, who's been unable to stay healthy for every year except one? Now, I must preface this by again reminding people that I've been a Tua advocate. I like the young man very much. He's been a very good quarterback the last 2 years. So my view on this is not reflective of my opinion on Tua as much as it's reflective of my opinion in general about extensions. Here's how I feel about extensions. I don't believe you give any player this type of money in an extension if there are serious lingering questions about it. With some players, it's a no-brainer. Like Jason Tatum, the Celtics are eventually going to give him one because there's no questions about him. He's a championship player who's proven his worth. Obviously, you'd say the same about the elite quarterbacks in the game, the Mahomes, etc. But with Tua, the questions are health, concussions being among them, notwithstanding of last season, which was only 1 year, and also performance against good defenses and performance late in close games. All of that has been substandard. So when you have questions about a player, even though you can take a step back and say, look, he's a good player, we would like to have him on our team long term, he's the best available option now, I just don't know what the rush is to commit long term at this money to a player that has not answered every question when you can easily take it into next offseason, use the franchise tag, the non-exclusive tag if you want, use the transition tag if you want, let him go out and see what the market is. And if he's unhappy, he's unhappy. So
Okay.
I seriously doubt he's going to sit out all of this season and not get $23 million.
He's not going to sit out all of the season, but I will think, and I do think he is going to sit out training camp if he does not get his money. And I kind of agree with him. I probably will write that no deal by July 23rd. I'm sticking to 7-on-7 work, and let me know when we have a deal going. I think that's going to really get ugly. This is going to get nasty. It's going to send the wrong message to the team in the locker room. Can you imagine every press conference with a player ending the press conference with "Pay Tua"? This could, as complicated as it was with Christian Wilkins, the players stayed out of it. I don't think this is a situation where you're going to see the players stay out of it. I mean, Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead, Raheem Mostert, the three team leaders, you know they're going to advocate for him. Tyreek has already said, hey, Jared Goff got that money, pay Tua that money. Now, we could both disagree as much as we want, but we know who the team is behind. And if he does not participate in training camp, and I don't think he'll play in the exhibition season, it could stifle the offense. And I think Mike McDaniel knows this.
Now, it's a major risk. All these points you're raising are valid. My point is, my bigger concern would be committing all of this type of money with all of these dead cap hits and then turning around and, God forbid, seeing Tua have 2 more concussions this year or suffer an injury that's going to sideline him 7 weeks. And then you're wondering next offseason, why the hell did we commit all of this guaranteed money to this player when we could go out into the market and get a Dak Prescott? Obviously, that would require a lot of cap gymnastics.
How dare you, Barry? How dare you?
Or someone. Now, at this point, Tua is your best option, but I just do not believe it's necessary to close the door and handicap yourself cap-wise at the type of money we're talking about.
I disagree. Handicapping yourself cap-wise would be using the franchise tag. You're already over the cap. You know you're going to have to do gymnastics and acrobatics to get yourself under the cap, cutting players, restructuring players like you do every year because you're poor team management, poor salary management. But if you're carrying Tua at $43 million in cap, hard hit on a franchise tag, that precludes you from doing anything really of substance in the offseason up until you could figure out when to get a deal done. And I'm talking about next year, okay?
Right.
I will also make the argument that if you give him a multi-year contract, let's just say you give him Joe Burrow's old deal. You say, you know what? I'm going to give you exactly what Joe Burrow got. And he agrees to it, okay? Joe Burrow a minute ago was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So now let's say you make him the 3rd highest paid quarterback in the NFL. you're going to be saving $8 million in cap space this year, and your roster salary is going to be manageable to give you a 3-year window to build it to contender. You restructure Tyreek's deal, and you make him one of the 2 highest paid receivers in the league, you're going to get another $14 million in cap space. This is, if you believe that your window to win a championship is within 24, 25, 26, you do the restructuring. If you do not believe in that window, your 25 is a hard reset, and you would be resetting it by not making to a play on that franchise tag. $43 million when I think you're going to be probably about $9 million under the cap. That's a lot of money to carry, and a lot of players to re-sign. You'll find yourself in this exact same position. That's why, to me, I don't disagree with you in terms of the average per year. And to be honest with you, Barry, I don't care about that number. It's not real. It's fictional. I care about the guaranteed money.
Right.
And to me, if I'm Tua, based on the structures of the deals that they've had, based on the fact that I'm already owed $23 million in the guaranteed money, I want 3 years of my salary guaranteed. So now you figure out what that price you want to pay me is. Whether it's, if Kirk Cousins is making 45 in real money, give me $46 million. 46 times 3 plus my $23 million. That's a fair deal in my mind. Hopefully that's on the table. I personally don't think Tua is going to play hardball too much with them, because there's a huge difference between $150 million in guaranteed money and then $23 million. And we all know that he's the one that's taking the injury risk. The question is, do the Dolphins have something fair on the table?
Right. I would counter with this. Because of the concussion history, to me, that changes everything on both sides. Ryan Williams, his agent, might be advising Tua to hold out until the Dolphins offer something along the lines of the Stafford or the Lawrence deals with $55 million average and the guarantee, which, as you said, is more important than the average. But I would counter with this. I think the agent would be delinquent if the Dolphins don't go up from, say, 45 to 50 million, and the agent tells the player not to accept it because of the concussion history. That would be generational wealth that would take care of his family for years and years. You're one concussion away from not getting anything. So if the Dolphins stick to how disciplined they've been, continue to play hardball and say, look, we're not going over whatever guarantee they're offering or the 45 to 50 million range, whatever number they're at right now, to me, they would have a decent chance of succeeding if Tua realizes that he's one more concussion away from getting no money. So why not assure yourself that signing bonus now? Also, I'd make this point with regard to cap ramifications in future years. I agree with you. The exclusive tag would be prohibitive in 2025 because that would be $42.1 million. And this is a team already with cap issues, having to re-sign a bunch of players next offseason. But I would say the non-exclusive franchise tag, which last year was $13 million less than the exclusive franchise tag, might be a more viable option if this stretches into next year.
I was not doing the exclusive. I have it at 43, considering the price of quarterbacks have gone up. You could have it at 42. We don't know what the real number is. That's the non-exclusive price. And if you want to hit them with the transition tag, and we can make the argument, okay, who's really bidding for Tua? Like, somebody took Kirk Cousins with a torn Achilles at $45 million a year. I'm not saying that that's going to be Tua's market. But you mentioned something earlier, Barry, and I thought it was very controversial. Would you go make Dak Prescott the highest paid quarterback in the league, probably at $60 million a year, as opposed to going with Tua? And does that take you further?
I would see how this year goes for both players. If Tua is healthy this year, if he's able to fix his issues against quality defenses, play better late and close games, then I would do everything I can to keep Tua, even though the price would be higher than it is now. I'm just all about keeping my options open unless a player is an absolute elite superstar. And that's the same reason why I wouldn't extend Jimmy Butler like he's asking for with the Heat at this point, because there are questions now about his lift, about it, how age has eroded his game. So to me, you only give this type of money to players in extensions when they are no-brainers, when there is no question at all about anything involving injuries or skill set. That's why I would not have given Trevor Lawrence his extension. Now, with Jared Goff, I said Stafford earlier. I'd obviously meant Goff. with regard to recent contract extensions. With Goff, I think you can justify it because of recent performance. With Lawrence, the performance in my mind has not been nearly good enough to justify the type of money he got. So two things can be true at the same time, as they say. I can respect what Tua has accomplished. I can be fond of him as a person. I can say he's a very good quarterback. All of those things are true. You can also say he deserves money similar or more than Goff and Lawrence. But it's also true to say, why would you limit your options by committing this type of money and cap commitments to a player who's now had a history of concussions and other injuries and has come up short against very good defenses late in close games? Why would you not want to give yourself the flexibility to go out into the market a year from now if you can't agree to terms on your terms with a contract? That's why I like the way the Dolphins are handling this. I hope they don't cave. And when I say I hope they don't cave, I want Tua to get his money because he's an admirable person. He has all the qualities you would like in a quarterback and a human being. But at the same time, who else is going to offer him this sort of money in the open market? And again, why do you want to handicap yourself long term without knowing if he can stay healthy and improve this coming season? I just don't get it.
Now, you say that and you bring up the concussions and the injury history, but why was there no qualms about Joe Burrow when he got his money? And Tua's played more games in his NFL career than Joe Burrow now.
I would say performance in playoff games would be at the top of the list, no?
Yes, that's fair. So if Tua had gone out there and beaten the Pittsburgh Steelers and won the first round of the playoffs, would you at least take that argument or conversation off the table?
Oh, absolutely. So right. But now to me, it's a valid argument to have. And also the play against top 10 defenses was subpar. I mean, we have numbers that we've both written. I wrote it in my 4-part series. Against teams that finished top 10 in the league in defense, he was a below average quarterback. Late in close games, below average quarterback. Obviously, there are physical limitations. I can say all of these things without besmirching Tua. I still admire him as a player and as a man. I just don't know why you would want to close the door on other options this quickly. And the risks that you raise, Omar, are totally valid. You could lose the locker room. It could create a bit of a circus type atmosphere. But I think ultimately his agent would be delinquent if he does not advise him to take the Dolphins' best offer just because of the concussion risk. How can he go into the season turning down that sort of guaranteed money, whatever it is Miami is offering, knowing that he's one concussion away from not playing? That, to me, is the variable that's not being talked about enough.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that there's going to be a pivot moment where whether it be the start of the regular season or the start of training camp or the start of the exhibition season, where Tua is going to have to make a decision. But also the Dolphins are going to have to put their best offer on the table. And I'm not certain that that's there yet. Even when we talked to Tua, he talked about how they've come a long way in the contract negotiations, maybe because of the market, but are they putting their best foot forward based on the player that they say he is, the player that they believe that he's going to be, and also the concerns about, I think that this can create a circus and divide this team. Mike McDaniels has worked hard to build a very good culture. Now, on the flip side of that, there is a reputation that players have about this team that they don't take care of their own. And yes, Jalen Waddle got his deal out here. But Miami is about luring other players and then compensating them, but not necessarily taking care of their own. Here you are, quarterback, second year in a row, 3-time captain, did everything you asked him to do. You didn't take care of him. He goes out there and he signs a ridiculous, and I have no doubt about it, acknowledge that it's a ridiculous deal when I'm referring to Christian Wilkins. I'm not paying Christian Wilkins $28 million over the next 3 years, a year over the next 3 years. That's crazy. Tyreek is making $24 million, and he's a top 10 player in the NFL. I'm not even sure Christian is a top 80 player in the league. But that was a message sent to the locker room. Now, what kind of message do you think it sends to the locker room when you don't take care of Tua, when basically him and Tyreek are the guy that this whole thing is built around?
My response is this is a business, and the players have to be mature enough to understand that there are other factors beyond simply performance that can influence what contract offers are. To me, the way they should be handling this is, and we don't know if this has happened yet, if all the discussions have gone simply through Chris Grier, Brandon Shore, and Ryan Williams, who's Tua's agent. But to me, the way to handle this is to call Tua in and have Chris Grier tell him, look, we love you. We think the world of you as a player. The only reason we are not offering you Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence money is because you had 2 and possibly 3 concussions 2 years ago. It's too big of a risk for us to commit this sort of money to a player who's had head injuries. Plus, obviously, the other injuries that had sidelined you every season of your football playing life at some point during each season before last year. So those are the reasons. I would say, don't take it personally. We love you as a player. We want to build around you, but this is the reason why we are in the 40s as opposed to the 50s in average salary. Tua can be offended by that. He could see the Heat's rationale, but regardless, I think that conversation needs to be had. It needs to be had just so Tua has an understanding of why the Dolphins are not giving him Trevor Lawrence type money. And also one other thing, Omar, I want to add was this. I would be comfortable with the transition tag as an option for 2025, which would be $35.3 million, according to Over the Cap. And obviously, that provides the original team the right to match another team's offer. If the original team decides not to match, it gets no compensation when the player leaves. So allow Tua to go out into the market. I got to ask you this question. If Tua were in the open market, would anyone, do you believe, pay him $55 million a year on average, knowing the injury history?
Absolutely not. And I think his market would be limited and probably down to warm weather teams and also dome teams. So I'm not of the opinion that he's got a tremendous, bountiful market. However, you never know what Vegas would do. You never know what Dallas, after, let's say they lose, Dak Prescott would do. You never know what Carolina would do. You never know what the New York Giants will do. If Brian Daboll has an infatuation with Tua. I hear what you're saying, and I have written this, Barry. I am a firm believer that I don't need to pay Tua $55 million in real money. I don't care about what the average per year in fake money looks like. If you want to put him in the $50 million club with 2 fake years at the back end of the contract, be my guest. Go ahead. Give him a $75 million salary in the final year of his deal. Go ahead and inflate the numbers if you'd like. But which is really what Trevor Lawrence's deal is, by the way. But to me, it's about the guaranteed money. And if I'm Tua and there's $150 million in guaranteed money on the table, and I say no, okay, that's a Tua problem. But yes. Now, if there isn't $150 million in guaranteed money on the table, and Tua is forced to play on the 5th-year option, and this could become a toxic situation for that locker room, I do blame the Miami Dolphins. If he's holding out of training camp, not holding out, but sitting in training camp and only continues to participate in the 7-on-7s, and the offense is off to a slow start, I do blame the Miami Dolphins. While it's important to get business done, and this is the business time of the offseason, they've got, 22 more days to get this deal done before it hinders the organization. And I hear what you're saying. The transition the transition tag, I would feel more comfortable putting the franchise tag, the non-exclusive franchise tag. But the transition tag gives you the same, puts him in the same situation as Lamar Jackson, who turned down deals with Baltimore, demanded a trade, and then eventually got something done. I don't feel any way about tagging him. What I do think regarding the tag is that it's going to stifle what you can do in terms of the caliber of team that you can build around him. So why would you go that route? Now,
I mean, two big negatives. There's that, and there's the locker room issue. You've raised them both, but I want to bring this point up to you too. Nobody knows how players think in this market better than you do because of all the relationships that you've cultivated so well over the years. And I know what the players say often is the truth. So I found it very interesting last week that Brian Hoyer, during a cameo appearance on NFL Live on ESPN, said that he hates to call Tua a system quarterback, but essentially that's what he is, and strongly suggested that Miami would be able to find someone cheaper to perform the exact same job in the offense. Now, you could respond to that by saying, wait a minute, Tua has unique accuracy. That's his superpower. There aren't 5 people in the world who could do this, let alone find 20 who'd be able to operate the offense as capably as he does. But then when Ryan Clark said to him, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't think he's worth $55 million average, Hoyer did not push back at all. So if you
Who is
believe
worth
what
55 million average? That's not Patrick Mahomes.
True,
Uh,
true. But
like,
if there's an NFL quarterback who believes that many quarterbacks could succeed in the system, and there's simply no need to pay someone 55 million to do it, especially someone with an injury history, does that hold any weight to you that it is a long-time NFL quarterback, albeit a backup quarterback, saying it? Because Hoyer said whether I think he's worth it or not, he's going to get paid, suggesting that he doesn't think it's worth it. So does that hold any validity to you?
it doesn't from this standpoint. I think that so many quarterbacks are jealous about what he's got going on and the system that he's in and the style of coaching. And there's a reason, a valid reason for people to be jealous, because Tua is in a great situation. He has been to the abyss with Brian Flores. He knows what that's like with that joint offensive coordinator. He knows what it's like with that weaponry he had in 2021. So he knows what the abyss looks like. So I think he doesn't want to return there, and then also factor in the Florida taxes. Okay, that's a benefit in itself. So yeah, the Dolphins are in a position to play hardball with him. I just don't believe it's worth it. Is the juice worth the squeeze when it's playing hardball with him is gonna handcuff you financially in the future years, 2025, 2026. It's going to send the wrong message to your team and to your locker room, where you've got a kumbaya-esque feel to it. Everybody, this is the first time in 16 years I've ever been around an organization where they actually believe in their quarterback. Not fake belief, but actual belief. And he's the leader. He's the catalyst. He's the guy that makes everything work. Now, when you're saying as an organization, we don't know, which is what you're doing with this multi-year deal, that's going to create some division. And you have gone out of your way to not create any division. You have never, ever allowed anybody to compete with him. You have always sung his praises. And now when it comes time to pay him and compensate him, and I'm not arguing with you that he doesn't, honestly, and I say this all the time, Barry, and I hope you do believe this. If he wants the Trevor Lawrence deal, the exact Trevor Lawrence deal, I'd say, Tua, here it is. You want to sign it? And I promise you, Tua wouldn't sign it. Because that's $132 million in guaranteed money, and I want $150 million in guaranteed money. Yeah, there could be other things that trigger more guarantees in future years, and Trevor Lawrence might get the whole deal when they have to restructure contracts and change around money to create cap space and blah, blah, blah. But that's a 5-year, $132 million contract, and I don't want that if I'm Tua. 5 years, $132 million? No, thank you. I'll pass.
Although to me, he'd be foolish to turn that down just because of the concussion history and knowing that would be money that would be assured if he has concussion this year. I want
more than $132 million, though, Barry.
No, I know. I would frame it this way to Dolphins fans who believe that they need to get it done with Tua and need to sign him long term. How are you going to feel if, God forbid, he sustains another concussion next year and doesn't come back quickly, and when he does come back, maybe doesn't play especially well or misses the year, and then you find yourself married to this guy on a long-term contract for 5 or 6 years, no way to really get out of the deal, ton of dead money cap hits if you do get out of the deal, thus limiting your ability to sign another quarterback. If you're in that position and you see Justin Fields play well for Pittsburgh, if he replaces Russell Wilson, if you see Prescott become an unrestricted free agent, I'm telling you, there are going to be Dolphins fans who are advocating for Tua extension now, who are going to be remorseful and regretful and second-guessing this if this happens. I hope it does not happen. Tua is a wonderful person. You wouldn't wish a concussion on anyone, least of all Tua, because he's such a good guy. But I'm telling you, the risk is there. That to me, it's not worth the risk. And I would not be concerned with locker room dynamics or having a lower cap hit on your books for for next season by extending Tua now. To me, all of those are outweighed by the potential downside of giving him long money, long term, primarily because of the injury history. I can't emphasize that enough. If there were no injury history with Tua, Omar, I would overlook the poor performance late in close games metrically last year. I would overlook the struggles against really good defenses. But to me, it's all about the injury history. That's the asterisk in this negotiation that his side probably wants to shrug off. But the Dolphins, if they're doing the right thing, and it appears that they are, can't just shrug that off. So that to me is why this issue is still unresolved, why most every quarterback except Jordan Love, Prescott, and Tua have received long-term commitments.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Let's move on to another guy, Tyreek Hill. He's still one of the highest paid receivers in the league. He's probably third in my book because I don't count a lot of Devontae Adams as fake money. I think this is his last year with the Raiders, and he's probably going to be traded because of the final years of his contract, where he's owed $35.6 million and $36.6 million. You know how the business of the league works. But right now, Tyreek Hill, in real money, he's going to, because I do not count the 2026 year, he's going to make $23.9 million over the course of the contract that he signed with the Dolphins. Real money. That includes this year's salary, which is guaranteed. That includes next year's salary, which is not guaranteed, but is the final year of his contract. He has been leapfrogged by Justin Jefferson. And then Cooper Kupp is making $24.4 million. Surprisingly good deal. He's getting every single dollar of his contract. And even though A.J. Brown has had his contract restructured and elevated, he's still averaging out about $22.1 million in real money. Calvin Ridley's at $23 million in real money. Do you make Tyreek play on this year's contract and revisit the situation next year, or do you take care of it now?
I would take care of it now. To me, of the three players you're talking about, Tua, Javon Holland, and Tyreek is by far the most obvious one to extend because he's the most proven of the three players. There are no questions with Tyreek except the fact that there's often soap operas and dramas around him, but there
which has not led to any arrests, weirdly enough.
Right. But there hasn't been anything so worrisome during his time with the Dolphins to make you think, okay, we don't want this guy around anymore. It hasn't reached the point of any arrests or any issues that would give the Dolphins pause for thought. So there's always going to be some element of drama around Tyreek, but he keeps himself in immaculate position or condition, I should say, and no erosion at all in his skill set or his game. He's still very much in his prime. So to me, he's the guy that would fall under that no-brainer extension category. Someone who is elite at his position, has no major question marks swirling about him, doesn't have the concern that the skill is going to drop dramatically with age over the next couple of years, even though he's obviously speed reliant and speed does dissipate with every human over time. But you're not at the point with Tyreek where you see any evidence that it's dissipating yet. So to me, I would do it now. He's the one guy that to me is the no-brainer to extend now.
And how do you revisit the contract? Are you talking about adding years? Are you talking about?
I'd be comfortable with that. Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that just to lower the cap hits, give him more guaranteed money, obviously without any guaranteed money being due in 2025. So I would be comfortable guaranteeing some that year and basically paying him along the lines of the other top receivers in the game because he's earned that. Now, that's not to say he's a perfect player. Obviously, he had a couple of key drops last year, but he's still, I don't think any reasonable person would say that he's not a top 5 receiver in the league, if not top 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think arguably I can't name 10 better weapons than Tyreek in the NFL, not just receiver, and that includes quarterbacks. There's Patrick Mahomes and the list. I wouldn't even put Tyreek below Justin Jefferson, to be honest with you. I'm very curious to see what Justin Jefferson does now without Kirk Cousins in a new quarterback situation. Jamar Chase, the concern for me is Jamar Chase, Debo Lamb, CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, right? Debo Samuel.
And Debo's going to be coming back for a new contract restructuring. I'm of the opinion that you do it now before the price goes up on you. And in fact, I said it when they were trying to create cap space and free agency. The easy thing to do was to revisit Tyreek's contract, extend him, change up the fake year from the $45 million, redistribute some of that money, and make him arguably one of the top 3 highest paid receivers in the league in terms of fake money and then real money. The problem that I have with that situation is that they did everything but do that. Now, do you think that had more to do with Drew Rosenhaus's demands for a new contract for Tyreek, or that the Dolphins said, hey, man, this is a lot of off the field stuff, Tyreek. Like, we got to get this cleaned up here.
Well, it's something that we don't know with certainty. It could very easily be both. We know that Tyreek is receptive to an extension, not only because of the UPS comment, which was very funny, but Drew said earlier this offseason that it's something he thinks the Dolphins will visit. It might just be a case of them not getting to it yet. Perhaps they needed to be convinced that there weren't going to be off-field issues that would affect his play. But there seemingly has been nothing that's happened in the building that we're aware of, and certainly nothing that's happened on the field to suggest you wouldn't want to extend him. So to me, it's an obvious move if they can arrive at the right number. There's no guarantee they will, but traditionally, Drew and his clients reach a deal with the Dolphins. I would expect it to happen here. I think planning for a post-Tyreek era as soon as 2025 would be a mistake. He's the engine that makes this offense run. I think we both agree about that. And I think you can squeeze another 3 effective years out of him, barring something unforeseen.
Definitely. And the final guy that I have the conversation about in terms of contract is Javon Holland. Now, this is a little bit difficult of a conversation, primarily because we know Jevon is talented, but we don't really know who he is as a safety yet, and especially who he is in Anthony Weaver's defense. Now, let me give you a contract that I think is probably in the neighborhood of what Jevon could be demanding, which is the Kyle Duggar contract from the New England Patriots. He got a 4-year, $58 million extension, $32.5 million in guaranteed money, $18 million signing bonus. Is that something that you would entertain? Pretty much a $12 million a year salary for Javon Holland.
I would. I'd be a little trepidatious, though, because we haven't seen a good player become a great player. And everyone knows there's Pro Bowl ability there with the ball hawking skills, obviously good in coverage, strong against the run, versatile. You can deploy him a lot of different ways, but we haven't seen a Pro Bowl level player yet. We've seen it perhaps in snippets, in small snippets. We've seen a good player. We haven't seen someone who's consistently elite yet. So that would be my concern. Perhaps in the injuries last year, I guess you'd probably be comforted to know that he's moved beyond that and that it's not going to be an issue early in the season. So I could easily make the case to waiting into October, November if he's willing to wait. But I wouldn't object strongly to giving that money. Here's my question to you.
You're not doing it before the season. You're doing it in the season. You want to see it.
I would prefer to see him reach an elite level first before giving him those kind of numbers, but I wouldn't object if the Dolphins did, because I don't think it would be an egregious mistake, because I think we've seen enough of him to know that at the very least, he's a good NFL safety. And after all, it's not our money. But I would say ideally we'd like to see a little bit more. Now, here's my question to you. Do you think we've seen more from Jalen Phillips or from Holland? Obviously, both have dealt with injuries, to have a stronger conviction about them becoming Pro Bowl caliber players, close to Pro Bowl caliber players. Which of those two players do you have more of a comfort level with saying, I think this guy is going to be in Pro Bowl contention every year?
I think that's Jalen Phillips. However, coming off an Achilles injury for a player who has injury history, I need to see him on the field and doing it. I'm very comfortable with Jalen Phillips playing on that 5th-year option. This is a situation where there's a lot of pass rushers on this team, and he's going to have to share reps and split the workload. I'm not interested nor comfortable in giving him a $100 million contract. Now, if he's looking for less than $100 million, okay, let's talk. Let's get to the table. But I highly doubt that's the case. I need to see Jalen Phillips on the field, and I need to see him be effective. I mean, the way he was playing in that Jets game before he got hurt, if you got that every Sunday, you might be looking at the defensive player of the year. Now the question is, can he get back to that, and how long will it take? And that's why I'm playing the waiting game and seeing this situation out. But Jevon, I just don't know what he is or what he's gonna be. Is he a glorified nickel? Is he a roaming center fielder? Is he Justin Simmons? Is he, I don't know. I really don't know, just because he's been in so many different defenses. He's been utilized so many different ways. I can't really put my finger on exactly how good he can be. And do we have proof that he's better than Marcus May? Like, and I'm not just saying that to be controversial. Marcus May was a Jets Player of the Year, was a player who the Jets used a franchise tag on, got a substantial deal with the New Orleans Saints back when deals were decent for safeties. Do we know if Javon Holland is better than Marcus May? Do we have unequivocal, no reservations or doubts about it?
I would have said earlier in Jevon's career, this is a player who is very likely going to be a Pro Bowl player. Now that we've seen several years, I would say I think he's got a decent chance to be a Pro Bowl player, but I can't say any conviction that he's going to rise to that level. So I'm with you there. I would say that would be the reason maybe to give it into October before making a decision. And if the Dolphins offer this sort of money in October, I would say he would take it. Some players, obviously, as you know, say, I'm not discussing it after the season starts. But I think if you're talking about numbers at that point, he'd be foolish not to take it, whether it's offered in October, November, or whenever.
I actually like your approach, Barry. Let's see you play. Let's see you the first 2 months of the season, and then we can get an Austin Jackson-esque contract if we want to do it. But it's a very interesting approach that you have there, Barry. I also don't know how I feel about the transition tag on Tua Tagovailoa, but I can see your thought process there. On that note, this has been our latest episode of Dolphins in Depth. We will be back next Monday with another edition of Dolphins in Depth, provided to you by the Miami Herald.